Hello and welcome to a new interview from MinnMax. I'm Ben Hansen and MinnMax is a Patreon about games, friends, and getting better. Today's interview is with Ben Pack, who left Giant Bomb, I guess it was January, and it's an interview talking about his career, his time there, what he learned, why he decided to leave, what his future might look like, trying to plot the best work-life balance in a weird world, how COVID impacted his career, his choices. It is a wide-ranging, interesting conversation. Of course, we also talk about being at the Simpsons table read together during E3 2018 and meeting Werner Herzog, which was a weird experience. So there's fun stuff there too. It's not just all about life. But we hope you enjoy the interview. If you support MinnMax at the $5 tier on Patreon, you can unlock the podcast version of this interview. Also, you unlock the podcast version of our Game Club discussions called The Deepest Dive, which are the best, most thorough discussions about games on the internet. Early access to the MinnMax show. There's a lot of other benefits, so we'd appreciate the support. Also, if you support us at any tier on Patreon, you get access to Compete in Trivia Tower, which is our new trivia show where the community competes to win awesome prizes like an Astro A50 headset and game codes. The first episode is up now. And actually, speaking of Giant Bomb, Dan Reichert is our co-host on that first episode. So if you want to check out Trivia Tower on our YouTube channel, we'd appreciate it. And then if you want to compete next month, it'll be in about the middle of the month. We'd appreciate the support. We think it's a really fun show and it's a fun way to highlight how much the community knows about games. Without further ado, here's Ben Pack. Ben Pack, welcome to MinnMax, sir. Hang on.
You really meant jump in. All right, let's go.
Yeah, like super duper jump in. No time.
Yeah, like you're
take
saying, let's jump in as you're like springing on the diving board. You're like knees down.
Hey, so what are we doing, man? We gotta jump right in. But how's it going, man?
It's going well. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. I think I'm speaking on behalf of the internet. I'm feeling it when I'm asking you, how are you feeling? What has your life been like over the last couple weeks here? It's pretty different.
I'm feeling good. You know, I'm feeling fine. I'm just hanging out, doing a lot of work, doing a lot of like personal project stuff, getting ready for some, you know, new life. Yeah, man, I'm good. You know, I'm good.
Any surprises after leaving Giant Bomb? Any surprising emotions, you know, sensations? Walk me through your mental state here.
Yeah, you know, so when I announced that I was leaving, I want to be like real. Like, you know, I never wanted and I feel like that fit in with Giant Bomb perfectly. It's like, I wanted to be as real as I could. And like, I really appreciate the streamers and the podcasters and the people who are out there and not afraid to like talk about the difficult stuff because like, you know, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, you pretty much left the personal out, whether it be political, mental health, like there were taboo topics that you just kind of didn't really talk about unless you were talking about that specifically. But like working at Giant Bomb provided me an opportunity to like be a real person. You know, no one there is really like putting on an act. Jeff is Jeff, Brad is Brad. Like, you know, obviously you play up stuff a little bit, like, you know, even like Dan would play stuff up a little bit, but like that's Dan. I mean, you know Dan.
That's Dan, yeah.
But and so like, you know, part of the reason I felt like it was my time to move on was I was just kind of a little bit burnt out, a little bit. I had you know, okay, back it up a little bit.
Sure.
For the people who are listening to this years in the future, we're in the middle of COVID right now. We're in the middle of lockdown. And because of that, most of us have been spending a lot of time alone or with another person, but alone with our thoughts, you know, doing a lot of it. Now is like a really big time of self-reflection for a lot of people and then kind of like evaluating your life and stuff like that. And, you know, I was doing a lot of that last year. When this whole thing started a few months in, you know, like last summer or whatever. And it was just kind of one of those things of like, yeah, I've had a good run and I don't know if this is what I want my career to be or anything. And so I put that out there, you know, and I wanted to not hide from that. And, you know, I could have been vague. I could have said like, oh, you know, it's just time for me to move on or whatever. But I really, you know, I appreciate when, like I said, people go out there and put themselves out there because it helps kind of create a sense of solidarity out there because everyone's going through right now and in general. And I think it also helps create a better atmosphere for people if, you kind of gently remind fans and other folks out there that we are all people on the other side of this.
Right.
So all that being said, to actually answer your question
No, this is
of surprises, I was surprised by how many people kind of reached out and were like really appreciative of me getting out there and saying that stuff, because like, I there was a definite moment, there was a prominent YouTuber who killed himself a couple years ago, and it was a big deal. And we were talking about it on the Bombcast one day, and I was legit like struggling to not like get a little teary-eyed during it. And it was the first time I ever got so emotional about something and felt really, really like vulnerable on a recording or a podcast or whatever. And it felt like it was a bad experience, but it felt good to kind of like have a real conversation about mental health and games and like what it means to be a personality and what that does to you, and like what your image, like trying to keep up an image and what that does to your mental health, and how do you stay true to you but also become a marketable product and all that stuff. Yeah. But all that being said, like it was nice to know that didn't go unappreciated by people. And I was actually just really surprised by the sheer number of DMs. I've opened DMs, I get messages, ats on Twitter, DMs on Giant Bomb that I still check from time to time, of just people, who either were like longtime fans and were sad to see me go, or like people who were like, yeah, man, I joined the site in 2018 or 2019 or whatever. I found it relatively recently. I really liked what you were doing. It's easy to let yourself get bogged down on the negative feedback. And it's hard sometimes to look at the positive feedback. So getting that huge swell of positive feedback after everything was said and done was really nice. And in a way, kind of, I had already pulled the trigger. I had already left the site. I was done. Plans were in motion, whatever. But it made it feel, I don't know, it changes the perspective of like, I'm walking away from this thing because like whatever, it's not living up to whatever, or I'm not producing what I want to produce or whatever, to I had a really good run there. Yeah. And people really liked that shit. And it's hard to remember that sometimes. Honestly, it's really hard in the content creator position to like, no, even though stuff gets dozens, hundreds of comments or whatever, it's hard to really know that people like it.
Yeah, you can be disappointed even by like, oh, I wish this did more views. But it's always, if you sit back and think about what does a football stadium filled with this number of people look like, and the fact that they're all listening to me talk about my opinions on Smash Brothers, like that is mind-boggling, Yeah.
And you have to constantly remind yourself that like the majority of people are not tweeting at you. The majority of people are not commenting.
Right.
They watch the video, they laugh, and they close the window and they move on with their life.
Yeah. So do you look forward to being nostalgic about this period in your life years from now? Do you feel like even from this small window that you have now, you're already looking back on it like, oh my God, that was really cool.
I am already getting nostalgic, really. One of the last podcasts I did was the after show with Jeff, and he asked me like, so what were like some of your favorite, like, did you have any standout series that you really liked doing? And the question kind of took me by surprise, because I hadn't really thought of it like, oh yeah, look, it's done. I mean, like I knew I was leaving the site, but I was like, okay, yeah, I'm done making stuff. What was the highlight? And then I started getting a little nostalgic. I'm still, it's only been like about a month since I've left. I'm still, some days I'm like, should I? Was that the right idea? I'm sure there's always going to be a part of me that is like that. Because I am the kind of person who will always question my decisions for as long as I humanly can. But all that being said, like, I'm really happy with a lot of the stuff we did, and I think the stuff I will miss the most is the stuff I missed the most in quarantine, which was like live events. It was getting together with the whole staff, Game of the Year, E3, PAX, that sort of stuff, being a whole team, and meeting fans, meeting people like on the street, at panels, stuff was like, I'm totally going to miss that stuff for the rest of my life, probably. Like that stuff was definitely the coolest aspect of this job. And I think not having access to that and the whole question of like, is there even going to be that kind of a scene post-COVID was one of the things of like, yeah, maybe I should move on. You know, that was maybe one of the factors.
Not to make you too trapped within your own brain, but can you really move on? I mean, you'll still occasionally be recognized on the street, I'd imagine. Yeah. And at the same time, if you want to, you could start streaming every day on Twitch and becoming a regular Dan Reichert playing with his Amiibo toys or whatever the hell he's doing over there. I mean, there is that avenue.
I have a lever on the wall that if enough people in chat spam an emote, it gets pulled and confetti rains down on me.
Yeah, and a cheese bidet shoots up your ass, something. I don't know what's going on over there. But
let me take this cheese.
But do you think about that? Of like, well, it's nice to know that I still have that in my back pocket if I want to flip that switch and try to get some of those feelings back, because from a news, this is starting out way too dark. I don't mean to say you made a huge mistake.
No, it's cool. I kind of expected this is the sort of stuff we'd be talking about.
Yeah.
But like, no, you're right. Like, you're totally right. You know, when I started out with Giant Bomb as an intern back when I was still in college in 2011. I was there for 3 months. I was in maybe like 5 videos, you know, like in the background, or we had like intern cam and we'd do like, you know, stuff that went straight to YouTube. I was like behind the scenes. I'd pop on like a Whiskey Media Happy Hour, the kind of proto UPF thing. And I was getting recognized from that internship as late as like the year before I started working at Giant Bomb. Wow. Like I had a job for the delivery app in their office, and as I was leaving the interview one day, a guy stopped me and was like, did you like intern? This is weird, but did you intern at Giant Bomb?
Wow.
I think a part of that is like people know how like tall I am, and like I'm easy to. A lot of people, I think I'm bad with faces, but even beyond that, I feel like a lot of people remember me more than I remember other people, just because like meeting me in person is I've been told, intimidating from people and memorable.
It's a rush of adrenaline because you fear for your freaking life. Yeah.
Well, one of my best friends, when I met him, we were both sitting and we were just talking, and we just ended up talking for hours just about random shit. And we both stood up to go, and I was like twice his height, and he was just like, what the f-? And he's like, I'll remember that forever. I'll remember that feeling of fear I had for the rest of my life.
You stand up and it just keeps going forever.
The Shadow of the Colossus music starts playing. So like if people are remembering me from an internship, not that it was an everyday occurrence, but like just a random thing there, I know that like for the probably not like, I don't know, rest of my life, but like for a good, let's say decade at least, I'm still going to get like, hey, aren't you that guy from Giant Bomb? And I'm totally cool with that. Like that's fine. You know, I really like talking to people. I've had almost zero negative interactions IRL with people. Mm-hmm. At worst, it's like somebody who just like doesn't know when to, you're like walking somebody and you stop and you talk to them and you try and like make a graceful exit, but like, you know, maybe they keep asking questions or whatever. Nothing like, you know, nothing bad. And so like, I don't mind, you know, chatting with people. And the other thing is like, I don't, like you said, like I could start Twitch streaming. Like I didn't leave Giant Bomb because I never wanted to be on a podcast again or a video again. You know, I talked about like, I didn't want to make that my career. I kind of come to the conclusion that, you know, I'm 31 now. I'm kind of entering that period of life where you start thinking about your like long-term future. Right. You start thinking about your family, you know, a potential family. You start thinking of like, oh, I'm going to have to start taking care of my parents soon, like that sort of stuff. And it's like, well, I could definitely stick with the Giant Bomb track. Like, you know, there are people like Jeff and Brad who have been in the industry for 25 plus years and will probably continue to do it until they retire or whatever. Like, there are definitely people out there like that. But I think that a combination of like how the games media landscape has changed and just kind of like how gaming in general is changing, both of those things were changing in a way where I kind of didn't see myself enjoying what I would potentially have to do to keep up with it. Like, you know, when Giant Bomb started, when video games were, it was like, you know, the like Xbox 360 era or whatever, right? It was that like kind of like video games that came out, you bought it, you went to your GameStop, you bought it, you played it, you're done with it. Now it's like everything's a live game, and so it's like, well, when like how does a quick look fit in? Like everyone has to be an expert on every game because there's infinite resources. Also, like the amount of times we got accused for my favorite term was when somebody said I'd be spreading misinformation about a game because I like got like the recipe to build a whatever wrong in Minecraft or whatever. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry. I only have to keep track of like 100 different video games and have like enough to say, like know enough to say a little bit about most of them. And then like know enough to say a lot of things about a few of them, like whatever I'm passionate about, whatever I think, you know, I'm going to start talking about. Like when we did the Game of the Year, end of the year recaps, not this last year, but the previous 2 years, we talked about like 100 games in each of those. Like people don't realize how many video games come out in a year.
But they're the experts on 3 of those, and it's like, well, he got a couple details wrong. Yeah, it sounds like you're somebody who is reading a lot of comments, or is it just impossible to avoid that?
Yeah, I think there was definitely it's a tough line to walk, and it's something that like I worked like with a therapist on. Like it was like one of those things of like, you know, okay, you have a Reddit devoted to your thing. Mm-hmm. Great. That's the community that is going to be most passionate one way or another about your thing. If you want feedback on whether or not the most passionate people like or dislike a new series you've dropped, you go to that Reddit and you see what the reaction is. And once you're there, it's real easy to be like, okay, let me look at the top comment. Oh, okay, it's pretty favorable. Sweet. People generally seem to like it. But I know there's got to be some stuff down here where people have some problems. And then before you know it, you're just like going to the bottom of it and you're looking at the comments. You're getting really mad because like you think they have it wrong. Like, no, they think I'm doing this thing. And then you just have to like, it took legitimately like 2 years of my time at Giant Bomb to get to a good place of that. And I still don't even think it was like perfect or anything.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what the right level is. Even like starting MinnMax here, I fantasize about, God, there's got to be a very healthy way to keep up, you know, games criticism on a little Patreon here. And it's like, is it the idea just checking out? Like I have time limits on Twitter and all that stuff. I'm trying to limit it as much as I can in YouTube comments, a time limit on that stuff. But it's like, there is kind of that sweet spot about just creating content, getting enough feedback to shape that content, but then cutting it off. But even like just, you know, this last weekend, it's like, all right, well, I'm a little bit depressed. Let me just sit down here and literally just Googling for any ounce of feedback about MinnMax possible. It's like, what am I hoping to find? There's nothing out there. Maybe some lightning bolt of a savage comment somewhere that'll have an impact on me. I guess my question, I'm just wondering, what is there that right level? Like somebody like Gersman doesn't seem like somebody who's sweating the comments. Has he found the right way to go about this?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, the older guard, I feel like, was pretty good about being able to limit frustrations to the point of like, okay, you know, I'm going to get in there, I'm going to read the comments, I'm going to address anything that's like super wrong or super nice, right? Like that's kind of the like, you're like, well, okay, I don't respond to everything, but if somebody's just like factually wrong about something, maybe they are making wild assumptions about something and you just want to clarify it. Or if something's like really positive, like, hey, this helped me get through a really dark place. Like this series, this podcast was like really important to me. Thank you. It's really reassuring to like pop in there and be like, it's, you know, thank you for watching. It's great that you liked it, that sort of stuff. But it's like insane that there is just, I was at the point when I was, you know, not like right away because I was still like learning the ropes or whatever, but like a year in, I would be going to NeoGAF and reading the NeoGAF thread about us. And I'd just be like, I would do name searching on Twitter for a while. And I'm like, this is like me driving up to people's houses who know, like, I know they're talking to me at this moment, and I'm just at their window, like listening. Like, it's like, in some ways, like I'm violating, even though they're putting it out there on the internet, it's like I'm also kind of violating their privacy. Like, people should be able to say whatever they want online.
Yeah,
I'm not here to stop that.
And not to be your therapist, but what do you think you were looking for? Like, what was that drive, you know?
You go up and they're like, oh, wow, he's so handsome and smart and cool. And you're just like, okay, well, that was exactly wanting to hear. And then, so, I started peeling back. I stopped reading NeoGAF. I stopped name searching. I got to a point with Reddit where I would read the threads and maybe the top comment and then pull out, like, unless it was something that I was really curious about, like the first episode of a new feature or something, I would try and read a lot of comments just to, like, because a lot of times people have really good ideas. Like, a lot of time people who have been with the site forever, Giant Bomb has been around for 11 years now. There are people who like me were like watching the Persona 4 Endurance run back in the day and still following it over a decade later, who were like, this is cool, this reminds me of this other thing, or like, it'd be neat if they could do this or that. And you're just like, oh, that would be neat, because like, that was my position coming into the site. Like, I was a huge Giant Bomb fan, and I thought my interests lined up with a lot of other Giant Bomb fans. But I'm also like my own person, right? And so I came in with this weird thing of like, well, I'm here. I'm not replacing anyone because I'm like a new person, but there's still this like segment of the audience that will be like, okay, this is the replacement to Austin or whatever, or like, when are they going to hire a replacement for Dan or a replacement? Like, it's a weird sort of thing, because it's like, we're not like, they could find somebody out there. I'm sure there are people out there who are like the people that you know and love who have left the site that they could get a weird facsimile of, but that would A, be weird for the people who left, and B, weird for the people who are coming in.
Yeah, but I feel like you naturally find that groove. Like, I feel like you on the Bombcast, you kind of filled that Dan slot in a way. You're not Dan's replacement, to be clear, but just for having like a voice that's a little more positive on that podcast, a little more just optimistic about games, not calling everybody else a Debbie Downer, but you had an enthusiasm level that I feel like is great to have in the mix in a podcast every once in a while.
Yeah, thank you. I was definitely like, I mean, I get why Jeff and Brad and Vinny and Alex and people who have been doing this for so long could get like frustrated with how stuff is going, could get burned out on certain things, and burnout is a thing that like comes and goes. Burnout can like, you can be burnt out for 6 months and then like have to and be like, a game catches your eye and you're just like, oh yeah, like this is why I got into the whole thing to begin with. Like, and then there's things on top of that of like, trying to start a family, raising a family, like having a kid and all that. Like, I totally get why there was that kind of absence, but like in a way, some people like, that's why they listen, right? Is like, they want to hear people who have like, there's an audience that was definitely growing in parallel with Giant Bomb, who are like, I'm older now. I'm maybe a little grumpier. Just, I think that's a byproduct of getting older. Yeah. You start to remember, you kind of reflect on the good old days and stuff like that. And it's hard to like come in fresh and be like, this is like, so I had very little experience in games before this. I had worked with Destructoid a little bit. And I had worked with Rev 3 Games a little bit. And I had that internship at Giant Bomb, and that was really it. And all that other stuff also was just like making funny, weird videos and just like, I don't know, learning how to do YouTube tags well and weird stuff like that. So when I actually started at Giant Bomb and I got like access to a company that would like refund games, right? And it's like, it's a work expense to buy a video game and play it. And like that was mind blowing to me. It's like free video games. It's like, oh yeah, oh my God. Like I am going to play as many games as I can. I am excited that I'm playing all these different games. I'm getting into genres I never got into before, just because like I don't want to pay $20 for Disco Elysium.
Right.
Like there's no guns in it, or at least you don't find one until very late in the game. And then you like start branching out and you start like getting indies hitting you up and being like, hey, I have this game that like nobody's heard of. I'm a big fan. Would you check it out? And you find all these like cool hidden gems like that. And it's easy to get really excited about that stuff. And I tried to keep that energy up. But then even like 3 years in, it's just like, oh, it's on Steam today. Just scroll through. This all looks boring.
Yeah.
When like 2 years ago, I would have been hyped for even the boring.
Yeah, and he was like, okay, you jump into the game, played a little bit, and then it's that internal threshold of like, have I had sufficient amount of interesting anecdotes where I could possibly convey this on a podcast, or are they going to throw it to me and I'll be like, yeah, it's fine. It's kind of cool if you like the retro stuff. You know, it's like that weird constant math to do in your head.
Control tight.
Do you feel like you got the hang of how to have an interesting conversation about games? Do you feel like you're still trying to crack that idea, or by the end where you're like, all right, I got this. Not that it's a formula, but I know how to present this in an interesting way.
Yeah, so like that was one of the aspects I had trouble with, not necessarily coming up with what to say about the games, because like my background before Giant Bomb and stuff was a lot of writing. Like I went to school for journalism. I did a lot of writing. Not to brag, but I won some awards for my community college newspaper writing back in the day. But I wrote about games, and because that's what I wanted to do, was like I would write about movies and games. I do arts and entertainment, and like convince my editor to let me write about like whatever Gears of War. And so like I've definitely had experience coming in, being able to put words to video games. I'm also a very much a systems driven player. Like when I get my hands on a game, one of the first things I like to do is like, how can I break this? Like, how can I push it to its limits? What is the wildest shit I can do in this game? Because that lets me see like, okay, here are the goalposts, and then I can work backwards and kind of like figure out what the optimal way to play is and stuff like that. Like I love getting into the systems of games and stuff like that. That was always my favorite stuff to talk about. And it was really easy when I had like at least one other person who would play that game, because then you can like bounce off of each other. You can talk about it. Where it'd be hard is you just like get in there, like you said, if like nobody else had played a game, and you're just like, okay, I wrote a bunch of notes. I can read them.
It's such a terrible feeling. And like the worst, I don't know, I'm very self-conscious about video game podcasting. I listen to so many out there, and it's always like, people are fine with it generally, but I feel like my skin is crawling every time it turns into video game 20 questions, where the other people in the podcast, like best case scenario is they're like trying to volley questions about like, is it like artistic?
Can you do this other thing in the other other games?
It's just the worst.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's like, you know, and not to get into like the depressing COVID stuff again, but I think that's like one of the biggest factors of not being in the same room with somebody.
Yeah,
is it's just harder to, especially in a group dynamic. One-on-one is a little easier because you can, like we're doing right now, you know, we're looking at each other, we're focused in, but like, you know, I definitely like, I have ADD. I was basically, I got diagnosed with mild ADD, and they told me like, you can't really do anything about it because all the medications that you would take for it would fuck up my heart, which was a whole nother thing. I would mess up heart. Anyway, so like, you know, I'm in front of a computer. I'm in front of two monitors. Like I maybe pulled up chat over here, and chat's going, and like somebody's in the middle of talking about a game that I don't know anything about, and I start to maybe drift off a little bit and look at chat, or like somebody like asked a question and I'm like, oh, I can look that up. I can go Google it. And then you start going down a rabbit hole and you're like, stop listening. Like being in the same room with somebody makes that shit a lot easier. So I felt like it was really hard towards the end there. I mean, we eventually started getting in a groove with it. Like everyone had to. But like those first like 6 months of COVID, it was impossible to talk about games on the podcast for me if I was the only one who played it.
Yeah.
Because like it just is like an exercise in I am shouting into the void. I hope somebody finds this interesting or asks me a question that is more than like, is the multiplayer good? Not like saying anyone did that at Giant Bomb.
Right.
Like, but like, you know, it's hard to be engaging on that stuff in a group because you also don't want to like talk over anyone else because like the audio is going to dip out and like you can't hear anyone when two people are talking. And
I'm sure there are thousands of people out there going like, quit complaining. It's podcasting about games, you idiots. Stop overthinking everything. But that's, I guess when that's your job, you can't help but overthink it. But,
yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like, you know, the amount of like, how can we make, because like, okay, you have the base product, you have the Bombcast. It's great, whatever. 3 hours of video game talk. Awesome. How can we, okay, well, we're not going to change the format of the show and we've got all this time. So what are things we can do to incrementally make it better? Okay, let's start testing different recording softwares. How's the latency on this one? Oh, this one introduces some latency. So let's try this other one. Okay, but this one doesn't take these solutions. So let's go and, you know, okay, well, now we want to get some cross coast in. And so like, is there a weird coast to coast latency that we have to factor in now? And just like, it's about like, if the product is good, which, you know, people like the Giant Bombcast, it's a good product. I feel comfortable saying that. It becomes like you get hyper focused on like, okay, well, what are like the areas that we could improve? And it's usually like tiny little things that need adjusting. And it's hard sometimes to pull back and look at the whole picture, you know?
Yeah, and I always have this thing too where I get done with an episode of the MinnMax show and then I realize like, I think that one's a solid 5.75 out of 10 in my mind. Or sometimes I'll get done and be like, that was a 9 out of 10. That was a really good episode. And then I think about the way that I absorb other podcasts. It's just the podcast. I don't care so much. Even the podcast I really love.
People are doing dishes. People are like exercising. They're running. They're kind of like...
Nobody has like a focus group meter going up and down with every second of the podcast like I do in my mind for the millisecond, which is unhealthy, I think, for recording.
Yeah. It's just about like trying to address like one of the biggest legitimate complaints that we would get is, you know, sometimes we'd spend like 30, 40 minutes talking about a game and we just say the name of it once at the top.
Yep.
And people would be like, oh, like, what's the name of the game? And in your mind, you're like, you're listening to the show. Why don't you know the name of the game? We said it at the top and we had been talking about it the whole time. But then in reality, it's like they're listening maybe with like one headphone in as they're doing dishes.
Yeah.
And like their wife calls to them. And so they say, what is it, honey? Like, oh, can you help with the... And then you put it back in and they like aren't really listening. Or like a podcast is at best engaging, but more often than not, it's something you have on a draw. It's like a nice like supplement to something you're already doing.
Yes, it's your,
at least that's how I consume them.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it. It's your friends you want to hear talk, but even sometimes if they're kind of in the other room and you just kind of want to overhear them a little bit versus sitting in the middle of them with your eyes wide open, looking around the circle. All that fun stuff. Okay, talking about comments. How do you, and you know, addressing the ones that are way off, how do you keep the community from drawing connections and dots between like, oh, Dan left, Abby left, Ben left. What's going on in there? Oh my God, it's clearly the ownership. Something's crazy.
Right.
Do you feel compelled to try and address that or clear it up?
Yes and no. Yes, because it's like, yes, because a lot of people, like you said, are going to jump to conclusions, especially on a platform like Reddit, where it's really easy to say something really incendiary and then people latch onto it because it's like Reddit is like, you know, a drama playground. Reddit is like where you go because you're like, oh my God, I can get really nerdy about this one thing, right? Mm-hmm. I can get hyper nerdy. Everyone who's here is here to be really nerdy about something with me. And everyone has theories about their favorite shows, their favorite movies, whatever, bands. You know, you kind of make up like a thing in your head of like, oh, these two people don't like each other, or
right.
Oh, they just got bought. Obviously, these people are leaving because they don't have any faith in blah blah blah. And it's like, on one hand, you can see why somebody would make that conclusion, the reality is 99% of the time, the answer is way more boring than you are anticipating. The answer is, oh, it was just like this other thing of like, oh, you know, like, okay, Dan left because he got an opportunity to work with a company he's always really wanted to work for. And like, he had a really good run at Giant Bomb and he moved on. Abby left because she wanted to, like, you know, and I'm leaving for other reasons. Like, it's easy to jump to conclusions when, and I say this term not necessarily 100% in a completely negative way, but like an echo chamber, where it's like a sort of thing of like, you come up with a solid sounding theory. It's like fan theories about like Westworld are sort of a similar thing where like one person will see something and they'll be like, this guy's a robot. And everyone reads it and they're like, oh my God, my mind is blown. You're totally right. This guy is a robot. And then the every time there is like a post about something that's tangentially related about that character, top comment is like, yeah, but did you know that guy's a robot? Like, and then it just spirals out of control. The reason I don't think it's worth ever like getting into it and really kind of clarifying it, unless it becomes like this huge overarching question of like what's going on. Like eventually, just to back up a little bit more, like Vinny started doing a kind of semi-regular blog post about like, here's what's coming up with Giant Bomb. Here's what we're working on. Here's like a little behind the scenes of maybe some production issues we've gone through. That started because like rightfully people were confused and concerned about what our output was going to be like with COVID happening. Like, okay, you know, is it going to be business as usual? Are you guys pivoting to something completely new? There was a lack of communication from us because we didn't necessarily have a clear idea to begin with. And once we got that clear idea, Vinny popped in there and started kind of updating people. And because a lot of posts just became like, well, what are they going to do? Like, what, they stopped talking to us. They, you know, did this other thing. And we wanted to make it clear. It's not because we don't have any ideas or we don't care about this community anymore. We want to do it because, or we're taking long to do it because we don't know. Like, we didn't know. And so it's like, unless it gets that bad, it's not worth getting into because like, there's always going to be people who misconstrue your explanation. And then you like expand on that explanation. And then there's people who don't understand that explanation. Like, you know, look at like when I was leaving, you know, I expressed that I kind of didn't, I mean, I haven't gone back and watched what I said. I'm somebody who tends to talk in circles sometimes, but like, I didn't want to make it seem like I was leaving because I was depressed. But I still get Twitter messages from people who are like, hey, bud, sorry about your like mental health lately. Like, you know, hope you're doing well. And it's like, well, actually, like, I'm in the best place I've been in my adult life in a weird way. And it's the clarity from that helps me realize necessarily something I want to do full time for the rest of my life. But I don't want to get out there and say that now, because then people will like be like, oh, then why did this other thing happen? And this other thing? And it just becomes an endless chain of you having to explain an explanation of an explanation. And it's like, you know what, I'll let the people decide what they want to decide and do my best to like make it clear when I want to make it clear.
Yeah, I think it's a nice summary of why you felt a little bit of that burnout and wanted to kind of step back. If you just take this conversation over the last 30 minutes and boil it down, it's like, yeah, it's all of those thoughts racing through your head all day. And at a certain point, it just gets draining.
Yeah.
And so that is that how you know you're burned out? Or what are the signs that you notice in yourself that you were nearing a tipping point of some sort?
You know, it becomes one of those things of like the things that were exciting to do are less exciting. You know, even like I got really burned out on video games towards the end there. I like Yakuza was one of the last, like I last year was a strong year for games. I had a top 10 that I'm really happy with, like all the games in that top 10 I really enjoyed. But like, so, you know, I beat Yakuza in whatever, early November or something. And when I was done with it, I was like, okay, what do I go back to? Do I go back to, because like I usually have like 2 or 3 live games, like a Dota, an Overwatch or whatever in the back pocket that I can, mess around with. And it's like, well, none of those are hitting the scratch. Let me try some more Hades, and then like I do some more runs and be like, this isn't it either. I try something new that wasn't hitting, and it was just like, maybe I'm just burned out on video games. And then I was like, I can't, for this job, I cannot be burned out on video games. Like I have to, like, well, man, what? Like, what am I doing? And then like I'm just like not having fun with any of these. Like I just need to step away from those and maybe get involved in something else. Or like it becomes like, so many people out there would kill to be on the Giant Bomb cast for a week. Like there are hundreds of thousands of listeners to that every week. And there are probably tens of thousands of people who would like love to get a shot at being on the show. I was one of them. I would walk to my shitty daycare job when I was back living in Santa Rosa before I was going to college, listening to, Giant Bomb, listening to the Bombcasts, and like imagining myself there with the guys.
Yep.
And then it gets to a point where you're like, oh, it's Tuesday morning. Oh, hold on. I gotta do a podcast. Gotta get ready. Gotta think of some engaging things to say this week. And it's like, I know that's something that's going to happen no matter what job I have. That's just the byproduct of having a job. I've never had a job. I'm like thinking, if I have off weeks at a job where I'm talking about video games for a living, there's not a single job out there that I wouldn't have these off weeks for. But like when that becomes more of a like rare occurrence, right? When that becomes like, and there are going to be other factors like COVID in general weighing down on you, like the turmoil around the election and other stuff was just like in everyone's mind. It's like, well, how do you be entertaining when that stuff is? It's like, try our best to put that in the back of our mind and put on a good show. But like, even under ideal conditions, like I still had weeks where I would like, I need to take a mental health day. And I just like, and like, it's like Monday night, I am dreading doing a podcast tomorrow because I am in a bad place for whatever reason. It's happened. I deal with really bad anxiety sometimes. And it's like, I know I'm not going to wake up tomorrow morning and be able to be engaging. So I need to just like take a day off or whatever tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
I'm interested in that idea of, you wanting that job for so long, to be on that podcast for so long, and so many other people listening to this are probably in that same camp. Here's a weird question. Is it worth it? It sounds like there are those perks. Is the lesson here that everything in your life will be about as satisfying as it is right now, no matter what position you're in? Is that the takeaway?
Kids, listen up. I'm going to give you a life lesson right now. It doesn't get better.
Please tell us.
Yeah, totally. It's super worth it. Like I wouldn't have gone back and not done Giant Bomb. I had some, it forced me to have a lot of weird personal growth about myself. And like, it was like a weird kind of hyper chamber of like, I have become so self-aware of everything I do, all of my tics, all of my personality traits, how I talk about things, because there's people writing comments about it, complaining or applauding it. Either way, like there are people pointing out little tics that you do, right? Like things that you don't notice about yourself. And you're like, okay, I need to take a step back. I need to take this all in. I need to like not freak out that I am now like a million different things to a million different people. And like where am I in that mix? Like the real me or whatever. Sorry, I smoked a whole lot of weed before doing this, so I'm very, no, it was totally worth it because like, it was fun. Like the most fun stuff will always outweigh any of the negative stuff. Like some of the most fun stuff I did was the weird cooking stuff with Jan. Like he and I would, make some terrible video game themed food, and just the planning of it, the recording of it, everything about it, the reception to it was all tremendous and really fun. And it's like that one good day can overshadow a bad week.
Yep.
Like one really fun video, like one of the last series I did was a video about Rogue with Vinny, and it really helped me look back in a very positive light at my time there, because like I was bummed that I was leaving, and Game of the Year is stressful. I think it went well, but like, I also like hurt my back, and so like I was like literally bedridden for the last part of it, and I just had this dark cloud over my head. And then people really liked that Rogue series, and it was like, oh yeah, no, I did do some good shit there. Like I did have a good time. I did like make people love it. And like the thing about Giant Bomb in particular, like, you know, is like for a long time, Giant Bomb was one thing, you know, the like from its foundation, even through hiring a couple people, felt like something you could kind of clearly define. And then, you know, we hired like very different people, like from like Dan to Abby to me to Jan. We're all like, we have similar sensibilities on some things, but we're all very different people. And so Giant Bomb becomes much harder to define at that point of like, well, it is this old thing because the people who have been there are still there, but it's also this new thing because there are these new people, but these new people are influenced by the old thing. So there's like a weird kind of middle ground. All this to say, like, I really enjoyed being able to take risks on dumb stuff. Like that was the stuff I wish we could have done more of. You know, for one reason or another, it got really hard towards the end to really break out it and try something completely new, because you start like second guessing yourself. You start worrying about like subscribers. Like, you know, okay, Dave Nalaska, our business guy, Business Dave, great guy. I loved him. He provided me a lot of insight. He was definitely somebody I could talk to about a lot of issues I had when I had him, because he wasn't part of editorial. He was coming in with a fresh perspective of like, how do we keep subscribers up? But it was this weird double-edged sword of like, he sat next to me and would get, you know, the cancellation emails of like, you know, when people cancel, they can leave a little comment about like, I am usually, more often than not, like 80% or whatever is like, I have a family now and I don't really have time to these videos.
Yep.
Like that was the majority of cancellations. Just like, hey, I wish you the best. Like, but you know, it's time to move on. But
then there'd be the ones fine. Of like, they mentioned politics. There's a lot of that.
That was probably the next biggest chunk.
Yeah.
But then there would be where like, I can't remember if I told this story on a video or not, but like, I was playing Halo one morning, the original Halo. I had never played the Halo games. And so I was like, oh, let me play through Halo. Combat Evolved. It's a good game, I hear.
Yeah.
And I'm playing it, and we were playing the infamous library level. A level that like people say is like one of the weakest parts of that game, right? Like, you know, infamous, whatever. And so like I was kind of talking on it a little bit when I was playing it, because like it kind of sucked and it was hard and long and weird, and like it's an obvious like sore point in an otherwise really good video game.
Yeah.
We got 2 days later, asked me, he's like, "What did you say on that Halo video?"
Oh no!
I was like, what? He's like, "Yeah, were you like talking Halo or something?" Because we got 2 cancellations of people who like got mad that I was talking the worst part of Halo. And I'm just like, man, if I can't like clown on the library, what can I do? And it was just like one of those things of like, you know, it's like maybe we gained some subscribers because of that too. There's no like, you know,
finally someone's dunking on that frickin' library. I'm signing up, baby.
But like, you know, it's one of those things of like, that's just lives now in the back of your mind, right?
Yes,
I'm just like, you go to say something about something and you're like, oh, this is a beloved franchise. I don't want to I can spend an hour talking about Kingdom Hearts, but I'm not going to. But actually the Kingdom Hearts thing was a really good lesson early on, and like, don't clown on shit for clowning on shit's sake.
Yes.
Like, there's stuff to clown on in those games, and I found those naturally, but like, I never necessarily came in, going forward from that, I realized like, you can't take that approach to things. Like, it's not like, it just shouldn't straight up be like Mystery Science Theater 3000 where you're sitting there and,
Yeah. It's pretty easy, and at a certain point, I could always be better at this, but just learning the lesson of like, don't volunteer negativity. Like, you're not going out of your way to be like, somebody's talking about Assassin's Creed in the podcast just to go out there and be like, I never really got too into any of those. Like, okay, shut up. Just shut your mouth and move on to the next topic. Or ask about the, hey, how's the performance mode? Just, some good 20 questions video game stuff.
How's the skill tree?
Exactly. Okay. Big lessons that have stuck with you from the team, from just your time there. I know you've covered a lot of it, but any big takeaways that you feel like you really cracked later on of, here's a bit of wisdom that'd be nice to impart to other folks?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were getting on it there for a second is like, focus. I think the most important thing, and it reflected in the content itself, is like, if you're doing stuff you want to do and the people around you are engaged as well, that's going to be the best stuff, and the audience is going to pick that up.
Yeah.
If you're doing stuff to check boxes, if you're like, well, okay, time to pull up whatever and find like 3 games on Steam to do quick looks of, and I had a lot of those quick looks where I was just like, okay, I'm going to play 3 hours of this game. I'm going to show it off to the best of my ability. I'm going to get somebody else in here who has never seen it before. They're going to ask me the 20 questions. I'm going to respond. And people often, it's not like anyone hated that stuff, but it was like, we liked it fine because it's like, it's something we can do. And the audience liked it fine because it's like sometimes, oh, cool, this game looks cool. I didn't see this. This wasn't on my radar.
Yep.
That's fine. But like the stuff that's really going to excel is the stuff that you're like laughing about when you're like planning it. Like my highlights, like, be open to dumb shit. Like the stuff I enjoyed the most was like Jan and I one day just took a giant whiteboard and we just started writing down literally every stupid idea we had.
Yes.
And then I was like, okay, and then like you start working. Okay, which of these is reasonable? Which of these is like too far? Like Jan was really intent on having the finale because of an inside joke on how Jeff frequently used the Benihana trick in the Jeff Gerstmann Pro Skater videos. Jan really wanted to have the last episode be shot live from a Benihana. And I'm like, this is great. Even if we don't do this is the kind of spirit I want to like have when we're coming up with stuff. Like, What is the silliest thing we can do and work backwards from there? And
just making yourself feel a little bit uncomfortable at certain times with the content. Yeah.
Totally. And like getting like just don't get so serious about stuff. Like get serious when you need to be serious, get serious in a meeting that's like, okay, this is our yearly like revenue meeting or whatever. Like we need this and this, we need this % subscriber growth, or like we've noticed this thing isn't doing as well, or this other thing needs to be more engaged. Like you can have a serious conversation about that stuff. But then when you want to like, when you're just bored and talking with somebody, you just sit there and be like, wouldn't it be stupid if we did this? And just say yes. I guess that's it. Say yes to stuff. Don't say no. I feel like too often there was a kind of an approach of like, why? And I feel like when people let their guards down and were really open to the random stuff, that was like our best content.
Yeah, absolutely. On a small, lighter note, but also negative in its own fun way, you were frickin' robbed in those Game of the Year debates for Best Dad in Arakawa. I was like screaming. God. Talk about not being engaged in podcasts. And look, I understand I shouldn't even say it because we did our own Game of the Year debates on the MinnMax show, and it was just like being on the receiving end of everybody's thoughts on our list is a lot to take in. But just so you know, I was rooting for you so hard. And I think the problem was you focused too much on the larger plot. And Alex was like, okay, let me tell you about the full saga. But if you just had highlighted the specific beats you needed to prove what a great dad Arakawa was on multiple fronts, you could have won that frickin' thing, man.
I legitimately, before that conversation, watched the last scene with Arakawa and Ichiban and got kind of teary-eyed.
Yeah,
like
it's beautiful.
I was like going into that. I was 50-50 split on Hades and Arakawa. And then the like just to kind of like circle back on an earlier topic, like, you know, I was kind of arguing against I forget the name of the dad from the Avengers who won.
Right. Yeah. Kamala Khan's dad.
Kamala's dad. Yeah. You know, at one point I was like, he's just a regular guy, like doing a regular thing, and I feel like that was into a lot of like the dads on staff who like that was kind of like that was dad goals for them. Right, you know, like I want to be a good dad who can do good dad things. Somebody in the comments was like, oh, he's just a good dad. Ben must have had a really good father to like blah blah blah. And I was,
see, but I can't believe that you remember that comment. That's so sad. It was a while ago. Sorry to dredge that up. But just the other beat about those Game Theory debates, you know, talking about just the power of Giant Bomb still, and how, you know, being honest with emotions is a real strength there. But my favorite thing on planet Earth in podcasting history is the several times now, or at least twice during the Game of the Year debates, where Vinny will get choked up talking about best moments. And it's that, but it's the 1-2 punch of him getting choked up and not doing what everybody else would do, which would be like, I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm getting emotional. He never apologizes.
Oh, he owned that shit.
It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things of like, video games. I don't know if I'm blowing it in his mind right now, but video games have changed a lot in the last few years. Like, video games are like a real powerhouse of storytelling, because you spend so much time with these characters and you're controlling these characters, and it feels like it's happening to you. Like, it's easy to get teary-eyed at a movie if they like pull the right strings and you like see character relationships develop and then get twisted and change or whatever. Video games like are affecting people on a level that they never used to, right? Video games were like, you get the high score and you win, and like you rescue the princess or you save the world or whatever. I think like even as recently as like playing Disco Elysium kind of opened my eyes to story games in a way that I had kind of been, like I said before, I'm a very systems driven player. I like how a game feels more than anything. I like the controls. I like the movement. I like the shooting, you know, whatever, the stabbing. Video games have a way of really kind of transforming us, or making us vulnerable, because like you're literally vulnerable in the game, right? You can die, you can lose progress, you don't want your character to die. And so you sort of form this attachment to them of like, you're keeping them safe, right? You are sort of having this bond with your character, and then things happen to them through the plot that you can't control. It becomes this like level of like, you know, it's like the things in life that we can't control, right? It's like, it's like a family. I don't know where I'm going with this, but like a family member falls ill or something, right? It's like one of those things of you can only sit there and watch it happen, and you like that is happening in games, and that is like I love working with everyone at Giant Bomb for different reasons. Like I have connections to every one of those people for similar reasons and very different reasons, and Vinny, like, you know, Vinny's a strong guy. Vinny's a smart guy. He's very wise. Like, he often would help me kind of when I had general questions about the job. He was like, you know, him and Jeff and Brad were like the guys I could go to and ask a lot of questions. Like, if I could just like sit and talk with somebody at E3 for a while, I would love to talk. I would chat with Vinny the whole time, because he'd be moving heavy stuff and he couldn't run away from me. But he was one of those guys who like, he's just real. Like the moment you start talking to him, it's like, everyone at Giant Bomb is real, like I said, but like Vinny just has this sincerity to him that I really so captivating. And so when he got like super serious about something, like, you know, there'd be moments where like something would go wrong and Vinny would like go into not like panic mode, but like, you know, I need to like shut this down, like hold on, everyone, we need to stop this, like E3 production or whatever.
Yep.
Like our truck went missing, like whatever, like the equipment's gone. When Vinny like kicked into like dad mode or whatever you want to call it, everyone in the room was just like, okay, what do we do? We are your troops, command us. He is captivating in that way. And so like you said, when he would get emotional about that stuff, you just suddenly are like, oh, this is real. Like he's going to let himself be vulnerable. I need to I'm vulnerable now too.
Yeah, it's Tom Hanks and Saving Private Ryan talking about his career before the army, right? It's like, oh, finally, okay, we're seeing this new side.
Vinny is the Tom Hanks of video games now that I think about it.
Hang on. Yeah, we really pieced it together. That's the greatest lesson from working at Giant Bomb for years. All right, we got it. We cracked it.
Tom Hanks has made a career out of, especially in the later half, guy who is very good at his job.
Yes.
That's his thing. He's the guy and he does the job. That's Vinny.
The role of a lifetime if Tom just wants to reach out and grab it. Oh boy. Before we let you go, we should probably talk about something that I was so happy that Brad brought up on your last episode when talking about the weird experiences you had, which was the Simpsons table read that we went to at possibly the last E3 ever. We got to sneak out before it started and go with Dan Reichert to the Simpsons table read. And I remember it was so fun going there. And I think even in the cab ride, we were talking about do you think there's going to be a special guest? Wouldn't that be cool if there's a celebrity there? And then getting there and just having that bomb drop that it's Werner Herzog. No better choice for a special guest.
God, it was so incredible. Just hearing him read jokes was such a highlight. I think that was my favorite thing that happened to me while I was at Giant Bomb that wasn't a Giant Bomb thing. That was a once in a lifetime experience. And then just even if he didn't show up, even if there was no special guest, just being in the room for that.
And hearing
did you watch that episode?
Yeah, have you?
I did.
Okay, what was your experience watching it?
I remember laughing a lot more in the table.
Yes.
And then watching it, it was just oh, this is how it came together. It was more interesting. Oh, yeah, okay, this is how this all came together with the animation. Oh, okay, yeah.
I watched it. By the way, if you want to follow along at home, it's season 31, an episode called Screenless. But I watched it and it was still okay, this is funny. It's still not. It was above average for later Simpsons for sure. But I'm such a dweeb. I started watching it and I was 10 minutes in, and I was I don't remember Maggie making that Baby Yoda joke. I don't remember joke. I don't remember the Jimbo running joke about the rocket ship. So I went and I got the script because I still had the table read script, and then I followed along. It was one of the nerdiest, most satisfying things I've done the last couple of years to follow along and see the little tweaks they made between the table read script and the final script for The Simpsons. It's fascinating. Some things were completely rewritten. It was crazy.
I also will never forget the just disgruntled look on Werner's, we're on a first name basis now, by the way, on his face as we were all can you please sign the script for me, Mr. Herzog?
I remember
just
yeah, he really turned into the Werner Herzog you'd expect when we asked something of him, but I was amazed at the rest of that table read, what a ham he was. He was yucking it up.
He was having the time of his life.
Yeah, I've never seen somebody so happy, and of all people, Werner Herzog, but yeah, he was over the moon. It was awesome. Let's see. Other beats we haven't hit, I guess, what are you doing now? Where are you going? What is your life?
I'm playing Valheim. This is the first game I've started playing.
There we go.
Since leaving, really. I'm not usually one for those survival games, but a bunch of my old Dota player friends got it and started a server, and I was I'll check it out. And it's great because like I said, I'm doing a lot of work. I'm not really playing a lot of video games right now, but it's the kind of game that I can my job is the carrot and boar farmer, and I just plant my seeds, feed my boars, go do work for an hour, come back, repeat. It's a great game for that. And then they'll be okay, hey, in an hour we're gonna go fight a boss, and I'll hop back on and do that.
See, gaming can be good. You fell back in love.
Yeah, no, it's nice. Legitimately, one of the things I look forward to most, once I'm more removed from it, because it still feels very fresh, maybe in a year or whatever, is being surprised by releases of games. I'm not saying that never happened at Giant Bomb. That happened all the time. But like finding games naturally, not having to follow the development of games so closely, like I feel like I'm going to like being able, not having to play any video games, being able to like put it down if I want to, especially like not finishing games, because there was that whole thing of like, well, I'll definitely have more to say if I finish this game, even though I don't want to necessarily.
Otherwise known as the Marvel's Avengers campaign. Yeah, I believe. Well, that's got to be nice. You know, on your last episode of the Bombcast, you mentioned like, I don't even know if I'm going to be tweeting. Just gotta say, it's nice that you're still out there a little bit, that you're feeling good about at least getting some thoughts out into the world.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things where like I logged out of everything of it except my desktop, and so now I'm like
smart
on it less, and I only go there if I really have something to say. Like they're going to add Mario to Smash Brothers, which is what I tweeted this morning.
Hot tweet, dude.
But like it's definitely one of those things of like I'm definitely finding myself less and less compelled to do it. I like still having it. I'm not gonna like delete my account or anything. I'll still have it there, but like, you know, I don't feel compelled to see what everyone's mad about today online. Right. I don't feel compelled to like have to keep up with the discourse or anything. I can just like load up my app, fire off a tweet, shut my app.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on finding a better place for your life. Not many people, you know, see that type of opportunity to make a major change and make it, you know, swing as big as yours. So congratulations on whatever new path you're journeying towards. Some stable, quiet career. Is that the rough ballpark here?
Yeah. Something a little less precarious. Because like honestly, that's one of the large factors of like my departure was looking around and seeing super talented friends of mine, like the people at US Gamer and like people at Game Informer and just like lots of publications just like cutting down or gutting completely. And like, you know, there's that little bit of imposter syndrome of like, oh my God, this other person is so much better than me and they're getting fired. Like what chance do I have in the future? Blah, blah, blah. Just the industry right now is in such a weird, turbulent place that I was just like, what's something I can do that's a little more relaxed? And then maybe like in a year, I'll do a Twitch stream every once in a while, you know, play some Apex with no camera on and just my mic on where I'm going every once in a while and not like having to say engaging or coherent.
That sounds great. That's something to aspire to someday, a cameraless Apex stream. Freaking cool. Awesome. Well, hey, Ben, thanks for your time and best of luck. And, you know, stay in touch online, however much you'd like to. So,
yeah, of course. And I do want to say, like, to, you know, I know a lot of Giant Bomb super fans are going to be listening to this. I really appreciate all the really nice messages I received after I left. Like, it really honestly was just like, I am constant. I tried to read every one of them and I tried to reply to a lot that I could, but I got so many that I just at a certain point could not. But thank you guys.
That's very nice. Cool. Well, thanks again for your time. And thanks so much for watching or listening to this interview. There are more interviews like it. You can find it on our YouTube channel and give us a sub. We'd appreciate it. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye. MinnMax is a Patreon about games, friends, and getting better. The Deepest Dive is the best, most thorough discussions about games on the internet. Prove us wrong, please. The MinnMax Show podcast airs every Thursday. Patreon supporters vote on what we stream every single week and a whole lot more. Give us a shot, try subscribing to the YouTube channel, and we hope we can win you over.